guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled Ex-Husband is Angry That I Am Hot and Moved On From Him. In truth, life is amazing right now. So since my last post, I have dropped enough weight and I am in the best shape of my life. I go to the gym 4 times a week, all the while balancing my job and raising my kids, maintaining my home, along with pole dancing classes. I'm on my way to becoming a dancer, but for now I am sticking with bartending while doing private dances at the club. I'm making great money. I have even started seeing one of the bouncers at my job. We'll call him Kyle. He's a sweet, caring man who isn't afraid to speak his mind. He is former military. He's really good looking too. Think Jax Teller from Sons of Anarchy. They could be twins. Yes, he knows about my past. Kyle is one of those social media junkies that likes posting just about everything on his Facebook. One night out at dinner, he took a photo of us together and posted it with the caption, "Future wife." As sweet and adorable as that is, I did ask him take it down as I'm not totally comfortable being on social media just yet, but by then the damage was already done. One of the more cattier girls, Samantha, at the club is mutual friends with my ex, Bill. She knows he is my ex-husband and is aware of the divorce and all of the drama. She is that type of girl that likes to stir up a bunch of crap then sit back and watch the fallout with a gleeful smile on her face. If she wasn't friends with my boss's wife, he would have fired her a long time ago. She routinely shows up late, gossips about everyone she works with, has drank herself into a stupor more than once and beaten up a client when he didn't pay her more than she thought she deserved. And that was all after I started working there a few months ago. She is incredibly toxic and most of us just avoid her. Long story short, she saved the picture and showed Bill and he went postal. Samantha came into work a couple of days ago and informed me that Bill, somehow, found out about Kyle and he is really upset and has made threats to come to my job. As mad as I was, I told her I didn't care. She horribly feigned sympathy and wished me luck. I informed my boss and Kyle of what Samantha had said. They assured me they would keep a lookout and not to worry. Last night during my shift, I am behind the bar serving drinks like usual. Ever since Samantha told me Bill was making threats to come to my job, I had been nervously keeping one eye on the door at all times. Sure enough, he shows up with 2 of his equally douchey friends. It was almost comical how alike they looked. Slicked back hair, polos tucked into dress pants, blazers and ducking sunglasses at night. I wanted to bury my head into the floor in shame for having seen anything in this man or considered him marriage material. I try to ignore him and go back to serving drinks. He notices me and makes a beeline for the bar with thing 1 and 2 following right behind him. This is when he is intercepted by my boss, Kyle and one other bouncer, Greg. I couldn't hear the conversation between them over the music playing, but I could tell from their body language that things were getting heated. It began to draw a crowd pretty fast and before I knew what happened, Kyle grabbed Bill up by his jacket and proceeded to usher Bill out the door, kicking and screaming while Greg and my boss escorted thing 1 and 2 out after him. It was pretty anticlimactic, but I'm glad no one was hurt. Mostly. After work was finished, I asked Kyle what was said. He told me Bill was pissed that I couldn't bother to improve myself during our marriage and I had moved on and he wanted me back. When Kyle established that he was the man in my life, Bill called me a whore and an idiot and some other colorful words. That was when Kyle grabbed him up and violently threw him out of club onto his ass in the parking lot and said if he harassed me again, he would duck him up. My ducking hero. Thing 1 and 2 came out right after and helped Bill to his feet. They got in the car with their pride wounded and peeled out of the parking lot. I'm thankful the situation didn't escalate and so far, Bill hasn't tried showing up to my apartment. I'm hoping he takes Kyle's warning seriously. I'm happily moving on with my life. The next story is titled I Don't Care If You Have a Kid at Home. Mine needs it more. First, a little backstory. My wife, F32, and I, M36, had our first child this year. A hell of a year for a child that needs to have formula, let alone that formula having to be sensitive. We are always searching everywhere near us for formula every time that we start running low, and usually we'll try to grab 2 of the largest containers we can get. Making sure to keep within the store's guidelines on how many they will let customers have. I want to feed my kid, but I don't want to take from others who may need it also. So that way we can make sure that we always have food for him. Which leads me to the beginning of the week. We were searching again because our stores were running low, and we would need more before the middle of the week. Searches for generic sensitive were leading to us maybe having to take a trip out of state just so that we can feed our son. We checked one more time through the Walmart app, and in one of the locations in our town had the formula. I rushed over to the store hoping that they had not sold out. I got there and luckily, they had it. I grabbed 2 and called my wife to see if she wanted me to get more. They had 10 in total, and the store had a limit of 6. She told me to only get the 2 because she didn't want to have others do without. So, I hung up with her and put them into my cart. When I did, I heard the shrillest, "What the duck do you think you are doing?" I turn around and see a woman who looks older than me. I could be wrong, I've always been kind of crap at guessing age. She says to give the formula to her because she needed it for her kid, and I must just be reselling it. I looked at her and, nervous, laugh a little and say no, I have a son and he needs the formula. She just replied to me that she doesn't give a duck and that her baby needs it more. I look at her and say no, I am taking this because my son needs it, there are 8 more on the shelf and that the limit is only 6 to be fair to others. She is having none of it pushing to my cart to take my son's food. I made sure to protect it and move the cart in a way that she couldn't act like I was being aggressive and trying to hit her. I am a bigger man. And some would call me scary and intimidating because I have resting, go duck yourself face. This set her off. She started screaming that I was stealing from her and her child. That I wanted her kid to starve because I was just reselling the formula. I walked away before I would lose my cool and she started following me through the store trying to get people to force me to give her the formula that she needed so badly. She finally found a manager and started trying to keep me there. I simply said I am within the limit, and while she was focused on them, I booked it. She must have looked around, couldn't find me and screamed. Because I heard her scream like someone had stabbed her. While people were heading toward her, I calmly but with a little faster pace made my way to the checkout and paid. With my son's food I got in my car and laid low for a few seconds, not knowing if she found me, and kept following. As I was pulling out of my spot in my rear view mirror, I saw her running out of the front door looking wildly to see if I was still there. I pulled out of there while calling my wife to tell her all about this. It looked like she was seething. All I have to say is thank God that the Walmart is on the opposite side of town. I do kind of feel a little bad because in the back of my mind I have the thoughts of what if they really needed it, but I have to feed my son, it's my responsibility as a parent. The next story is titled Am I the A-hole for not willing to pay a courier to tow their truck out of my driveway? A courier came to my house while I was at work to drop off a parcel. The courier called me and advised they got bogged between the stones and dirt in my driveway and they cannot get the van out. I have never had this issue before, as I have had many visitors come to do work and drive out of my driveway just fine. The courier is very agitated and blames me for having an inadequate driveway for their van. They ask me to come home to help them get their van unstuck from my driveway. However, I cannot just leave my job in the middle of the day, and it's not my fault he got stuck in my driveway. So, I advised them that I didn't know how to help them and that they could call their courier company to assist them. They threatened me more and said if I don't come and help them, they will call a tow truck and I will be liable to pay for all the costs. I have cameras around my house, and I watched the courier suddenly brake and skid into my driveway, causing the tires to sink into the rocks. I also watched the courier ransack my shed to get shovels and wood to try and dig their van out and not even return the tools back to where they belong, making a mess. Eventually the courier gives up, calls a tow truck to pull out his van from my driveway, and gives me multiple abusive messages asking me to pay his towing bill. Am I the a-hole for not willing to pay the courier the towing expenses to get out of my driveway? Comment said not the a-hole. Too many courier drivers park where they want, blocking driveways, footpaths, or parking on blind corners. I bet the company will use this incident in future training. Don't do what idiot X driver did, because we had to pay a crapload of money to fix all his messes up that he made that day. Another comment said not the a-hole. You should contact the courier's company and let them know about the behavior, include the video and a copy of the abusive messages. If your drive needs work or any of your tools are damaged or missing, you should ask them to cover the costs, as this was entirely due to their driver's wild entry onto your driveway. The next story is titled You Ruin My Family for Nearly 5 Years, I Ruin Your Levers Assembly, Idiot. A few years ago, when I was in year 6, I got this teacher. Let's call her Mrs. D. She absolutely hated my family, from my mum to my brother and by extension, me. Some context: younger brother was in year 5 at this point, but in year 1, my mum began pushing for him to be referred. This teacher was one of several that lied and said he was tested and didn't have anything wrong. They had an unqualified teacher do this test on him, and then about a third of the staff backed her up. My parents had to go private and spent a lot, between a couple hundred and £1,000. We now know he is dyslexic and has ADD, which my mum also has, whilst my dad and several other members of our family have dyslexia. This teacher continued crap with my family, and after years I had her as my year 6 teacher. She hated me despite the fact I was the classic shy kid and didn't bother anyone. I have social anxiety and regularly get panic attacks, but she wouldn't let me leave the classroom. Mrs. D's torment continued for a total of 10 months, and after shouting at me in front of the class for missing the summer performance, I was at home throwing up for 3 days and had a temperature of 39°C. It wasn't even like I had lines, we all just sang the songs and that was it. On the Monday of my final week in that school is when the assembly will happen. The week before the Leavers Assembly, my entire class is writing our speeches as we are all required. I completed mine and it had all that stereotypical boring stuff. But Mrs. D was out to get me and decided to rewrite the entire thing for me. Turns out she did this to most in my class. Then rips up my speech in front of me. That Sunday night, my angry 11-year-old self wrote the most passive-aggressive speech in the history of speeches, and without telling Mrs. D, I read it out to a room of my 30 classmates, all our parents and grandparents, plus a bunch of my old teachers and our head teacher. Everyone was filming and laughing. Then at the back of the room, I saw the look of terror in her eyes, but I didn't stop and even showed the speech she wrote before ripping it up to shreds. At the end, I gave the reward to a classmate of mine before walking off the stage with the biggest smirk ever. Highlights include, thanks to Mrs. D, I now know that it's not what you know but who you know. She favorited her those with parents on the PTA. And I also said something about her judging my family yet being too busy with her phone to notice the fact her children were running across the road unsupervised, and 2 of them were nearly hit by a car when they suddenly run in front of a car I was walking by and saw. Another is, I am very grateful for some people and have a lot of respect for those people like Mrs. G and Mrs. M. Luckily for her, Mrs. D doesn't have to be burdened with that kind of stress. Or, I'm sure everyone knows of the character Mrs. Trunchbull. Thanks to Mrs. D, I was able to experience her in person. There was more, but I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head because it was about 6 years ago. Afterwards I had parents and some teachers come up to me and congratulate me on my speech. One of the best moments of my life to this day. The next story is titled The Front Desk Goes Lord of the Flies. So, we're understaffed, no change there. However, there are multiple illnesses sweeping through the front desk. Our perpetually absent Na is in the hospital with a MRSA infection. There's the particularly nasty cold everyone has going on. I've been covering shifts left and right. However, an intruder from my own house downed me. I got strep throat and pink eye, from my child. Toddlers are gross, y'all. So, on Wednesday, after nearly a week of coughing, and 3 days of itchy, irritated eyes, my husband forces me to see a medical professional. By forces, I mean he loads me into the car and drops me off at urgent care as he tells me, go see a doctor or go sleep at the hotel. Guess he was traumatized by literally having to carry me out of the hotel on Saturday lol. So I get diagnosed and the doctor says, unless your job cannot function without you, do not go in. I begrudgingly called my boss and told her the bad news. I then called my PM shift who was at the hotel. I told her the bad news that she would have to cover the 11 p to 7 a shift I was supposed to cover, after I covered our part-time Na who is doing finals at her college. Now, I feel bad that she had to cover a shift, but I was going to work from 11 p.m. to 3 p.m. the next day, and nobody blinked. So, it takes 3 people to cover a shift I was going to cover. That's fine. It's crap tea, but fine. The real drama comes for PM and audit shift on Thursday. PM shift started texting in the FD and bosses group saying that she would do 1 shift, not a double. My normal AM said she couldn't do PM, but if PM could stay till 2 a.m., she would come in for audit and the AM shift for Friday. My GM jumped in and said, AM, please do PM just this once. AM said she had to take her madre to the doctor at 3:30, true, since she specifically told me she couldn't stay late that one day earlier in the week. I backed her up and she and GM made a plan for PM to do PM and that AM would be in at 11 to do audit and part-time AM, who has the ducking flu, would cover AM for Friday. I think that's the end of it. Incorrect. I get a text at 4 PM that says, "Come in and I will do audit," from my GM. I lose my mind. I text in the group, "What's going on? Why is GM telling me to come in?" And then the calls start. GM calls first and says, "I sent that to the WROG person. You rest," and hangs up on me. Then AM calls me and she goes off, PM hasn't shown up, and we gave her enough time to come in. I can't just change my mom's appointment. GM, who recently had a ducking stroke, is at the hotel by herself covering the desk. Then the part-time AM calls me and she's clearly upset. She says, "Name. I am so sorry I had to leave to get my kids, and GM told me to go, but PM just texted me." I calm her down, and I tell her that she isn't in trouble in the least and I'm thankful she could come in at all. She tells me that PM sent her a ranting text. It goes as follows: "I'm sorry it had to be you I did this to. But management is selfish and would have made me do another double. They don't care that I'm sick and I have a life. They just expect me to work. They wouldn't care how sick someone is. Now y'all, I work around everyone's schedule. I cover every ducking shift that needs covered. 2 whole extra weeks of hours in November alone, and me on salary. I don't call in unless I literally cannot get out of bed. At 4:30 I get a text from PM shift, sorry, not personal. Been trying to find a workable solution all day. No one cared about covering audit when they thought it could be left on me. By 11 PM, nothing can be done. I wasn't going to do that again tonight. So here I am, 1 full day after seeing the doctor, at work, primed to do a double shift, because audit hasn't said if he is out of the hospital yet. I wasn't even supposed to come back till Saturday. When I got here today, part-time AM is furious with PM shift. She said, "How dare she call you selfish when we all know you do doubles all the time. When you literally work every single angle to make sure everyone has the time off they need. If I wasn't so close to my own hotel, I'd leave. My husband told me he would cash out his retirement, pay off our debt, so that I could quit and not worry about money. He literally used my resume to apply to other jobs for me." If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.